Hello and welcome back to Bleeding Blue. This is a podcast and show about the history of the New York Football Giants. My name is Justin, and with me is one of my best friends, Nikki Snacks. Snacks, we have a lot of things. No, I wouldn't say a lot of things. We have two main things that we're going to talk about this week. We're splitting the episode into two. First half, appreciation for Eli. Second half, Big Blue VCR joining us once again to preview the 1989 season so we can get into No Medals for Trying by Jerry Izenberg, which is a really cool book. We're going to get into it next week. Snacks, talking Eli this week. So you have to be doing great.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Justin. I am doing phenomenal. This is my hero. You know, you show the tattoo. It's on my back like an idiot that I am. But it is perfect. We got the announcement that they're retiring Eli's number and inducting him into the Ring of Honor. What was it? Week 3, I believe.
Yeah, so it's September 26th against the Falcons. Yeah.
So why not sit here and talk about Eli, all the great memories that we've had in Giants history, and do it that way. But the second part of Big Blue VCR is phenomenal too. So please keep listening.
All right, so Snacks, you do have a tattoo, and let's just start off with this more of a sentimental note, and then maybe the second half of this conversation will be like, Hall of Fame. Why should he be in the Hall of Fame? Blah 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 blah. I like revisiting that conversation. I don't know. I'm sick because I know you're going to get sick.
I know
over
you. I saw you on Twitter this week. You started it.
I started. So tell us why that tattoo? Why Eli? I know it's probably a simple question. It's probably a dumb question, but why that tattoo? Why that saying? Why take a quote from Eli? Go for it, because you do have a tattoo. It is permanently on your body for the rest of your life.
Yes, and it is, and the tattoo artist did it perfectly, and it's in Giants blue. It's got the Giants kind of lining of it. It's perfect.
The text, the
text. Yes, exactly. And well, as you guys probably know, whoever's listening or watching, I'm a Giant fan. Been a Giant fan a long time.
A sane Giant fan.
A sane Giant fan, yes, as I like to call myself. Very sane. Actually, probably one of the more sane Giant fans around nowadays. But anyway, no, when Eli, 2004, we drafted Eli, and I was what, 10, 11, 9, something like that, very easily. So I was stuck with Eli forever. And the fact that he went that whole distance and did everything he did, 16-year career with the Giants, whatever it was. And he was such a model quarterback, a model citizen, never missed a start. There's a lot of things in life you can't count on. Family will fuck you over. Everybody will fuck you over. Nothing in this world that won't fuck you over. But Eli always showed up Sunday in the fall. And that was my sanctuary. I sat there, watched Eli, watched my Giants, and that was it. And when I watched his retirement speech, and it's always tough, because maybe his career should have been saved for a year or two with incompetent general managing move, but it was tough. He sat up there. He goes, Wellington Mara once said, "Once a Giant, always a Giant. For me, it's only a Giant." And I remember watching that on my couch, watching the TV as he said that, and I'm like, that's it. I'm going to get a Giant tattoo one day or another. That's what it's going to be. And why not right against my back? Because I love that team more than anything in the world. I love Eli more than anything in the world. And that was it. He was the constant for 15, 16 years every Sunday in the fall of my life. And I know he was for you too. So
yeah,
that doesn't get said about enough. He was there every Sunday, whether they sucked, whether he sucked, whether he took shit in the papers the next day or on local news radio, Boomer and Geo, whatever it was. He was there every goddamn week. He was there. And not everybody in your life can say that, but he was there. Yeah, it was his job. He got paid a lot of money to do it, but Eli was there. And I have zero regrets about the tattoo I have on my back.
95% of my Giants fandom life has been Eli Manning. Yes, I know I'm young. I know I'm a very young person. I know I'm a very young fan, and I'm thankful that despite me being so young, that I'm behind a microphone, and a lot of people like to listen and talk with me, and they respect my opinion on what I have to say about the Giants. But still, I would like to think 23. It's not it's a young life, but also it is still relatively. It's a long time in some ways too, and Eli Manning has been here for, 95, 97% of it, if we really want to get really real with it. Right. And sure, maybe while you were talking Snacks, I was trying to think to myself, when is the ideal time to grow up as a Giants fan? Was it with, Sam Huff and Gifford and, but, those teams had a stretch of, they won some championships, but then also they had a stretch of they lost 4 championships in a row, and it was crazy. They lost 4 NFL championships in the span of 5 years in the 50s and the early 60s. So it's maybe not that time period, but you saw a lot of great players, saw a lot of great Hall of Famers. Maybe you wanted to be growing up with the Crunch Bunch, but then being a teenager and early adult with the, throughout the 80s and the early 90s, right? So maybe that was the perfect time to grow up a Giants fan. But really, I think I really had it perfect. I think I had it absolutely perfect, where I started to really be, one of my first games that I remember was it was Giants Eagles. It might be 2004, where Eagles were blowing out the Giants and there was a fight. That's my first Giants memory. And I think the Giants were wearing red. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but then also I remember watching the Jay Feely 17 missed field goals in Seattle. I remember watching that game in my sister's room for whatever reason on, where she still had a VCR. She still had a VCR player attached to the TV. So I am young enough. I am old enough for that. Excuse me. So that I know what VCRs were, and I did grow up with VCRs. But so that was really the first game that I remember being upset about, was that Seattle Giants game, and Eli was quarterback. Eli was a quarterback through that game. Eli was a quarterback from the first game that I went to. And he was the quarterback the last football game that I went to. Was it? No, it was not the Miami game. Might have been the second to last football game that I went to.
Yeah.
Sure.
You were there for that. Yes.
Yeah. Were you there for that?
No, I actually refused to go. I had free
Did you
tickets.
cry from home?
Yeah, it was bad. I couldn't do it. Physically couldn't do it. It was more so just the team sucked, and I was so disappointed for Eli, and knowing that's how Eli was going out, 3-13 team, 4-12, whatever they were, and I couldn't do it. So I watched,
and it goes to show. I mean, not everybody's going to have a Strahan. Even despite Peyton Manning's last game being a Super Bowl victory, it was not. That still is not. I don't consider that a happy ending for Peyton Manning. Not everybody has the Strahan Ray Lewis moment. And if anything, I would not have a Giants podcast. I would not be such a diehard Giant fan if it were not for Eli Manning helping us win 2 Super Bowls, but especially one of them. One of them was the arm of Eli Manning, and people and the talking heads in the media, they think that 2007, 2011, they are carbon copies of each other, which I will never be able to fathom how that happens. But neither here nor there, Snacks. I know you want to comment on something, but just in terms of just wrapping up this whole thing about Eli's final years, and they didn't end well, but that's who Eli Manning is. Eli Manning was not going to call it a career when it was convenient for himself. It's I know if he called it at the end of 2017, right? It's they bench me. I know they want me. They did bench him. So there was people in the building that wanted him gone, whether that was McAdoo, whether that was ownership, whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on it. I don't want to get into it. But I can sense that there are people that may not want me here. I'm just going to get out. No, the dude wanted to win. And he wasn't one of those people that was going to tell you how much he wants you to win. Like Damon Snacks Harrison is going to tell you, I want to win so bad. I want to do this so bad. And all these guys that tell you how hard they worked. Eli, you knew that Eli was going to be a guy that was going to open the doors in the morning and he was going to close them at night, right, with those coaches, because that's the type of guy that he was. And he played until he just couldn't physically anymore, but he played up until the point where he just could not continue with the franchise. And I still have a feeling like the reason why I was kind of scared, Snacks, when all those rumors were kind of floating around with Eli may go to Chicago, Eli may go here. I was thinking, you know what? If Eli maybe didn't have a family here, he would, because the dude just wants to win. He wants to win because that is who he is. He is a winner, and he did it twice at the biggest stage, and he did it twice with kind of two virtually different teams, so to speak. So,
there's nothing that I can put on what you just said to emphasize more of what Eli was. And the whole, he might go to Chicago, he might go these little places. Yes, I remember that. And I'm like, Eli, please don't. You got to retire in this giant blue.
I knew for a fact that was never going to happen.
No, you're right.
I'm thinking to myself, like, it has to be going through his mind, because this dude is a winner and he wants to win. And that's all that, like, the reason why he comes back, the reason he always, first of all, wasn't even the last final years of his career. He always, maybe, let's throw in the 2011 NFC Championship game. He always got the shit kicked out of him. And the reason why he always got the shit kicked out of him is because he was a stone cold killer, and he's willing to stand in that pocket. He's willing to manipulate that pocket, stand in that pocket for as long as it takes to deliver a ball deep down the field. So he always got the shit kicked out of him, because it was also self-induced, because the dude just, it was like I said, he was a stone cold killer. So he always got killed. He was getting killed for years. And despite all that, never said poo-poo about anything, poo-poo about anybody. And he got up and not only did he come up and he make the next throw, but he was there the next Sunday. And really, so to kind of maybe put a bow on this there. So I put out on Twitter on the Bleeding Blue account, why is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? Go. And really, the two best explanations that we got, Snacks, and this comes from, shout out to Eric Fischetti and Paul Rudd. They basically said the same thing.
Go forward.
You can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning.
Can't.
That's true.
It's so true. Literally, you cannot do that. Everybody will sit there. They'll do a Last Dance whole parade of a documentary for Tom Brady. And you know what needs to be in that documentary?
Eli Manning.
Eli Manning. The two losses that he had, one of which was the greatest upset in sports history. I don't care what anybody says. Outside of the USA being Russia in hockey. But,
all right. Yeah, nobody cares about hockey, boomer.
Yeah, well, I throw it in there. But anyway, it is that big of a deal. And I can't get over how right you are. I can't. Yeah. And I don't really know. I don't know what to say after this, because you know how much I love Eli. You know it.
Yeah.
And the consistency every week.
And I think, Snacks, we're going to look back 3 years from now. I think it'll be, 3-4 years from now when he's Hall of Fame eligible. And when
he's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, when he's Hall of Fame eligible, because it will be a conversation. We will have to have a conversation eventually.
You're right.
Convincing the national world of why Eli Manning.
I got a gun now. I'm just going to shoot them all. So
geez.
Sorry, cut that.
No, it's fine. I'm leaving that in there.
I'm never going to shoot anybody. I want that for the record. I said that out of emotion. It's going
to metaphorically.
Yes. What a paintball gun.
Shoot somebody with the bottom of his foot. So 3-4 years from now, when everybody, when we're bringing up this whole conversation again, I hope, now I'm not saying I hope that the best starting quarterbacks in the NFL don't play 16 games, but I think the league is trending towards right now. I think the league is trending towards Patrick Mahomes isn't going to play 16 games every year. Lamar Jackson, I think, he missed time with COVID this year. So that may, that's an asterisk. Lamar Jackson may not play 16 games. Aaron Rodgers has consistently missed time. Ben Roethlisberger has consistently missed time throughout his entire career. Tom Brady is an exception. Drew Brees, I feel like, these are going to be the guys that we kind of grew up with that are going to be the final exceptions of really Iron Men. But all these guys, they're missing time, and they're, even take Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, I think, is a tough son of a bitch. He's missed time that his first 2 years of his playing career, largely because, whether he's a mobile guy or whether he doesn't have enough pocket awareness, whatever. I think it is going to become commonplace where we should not expect starting quarterbacks to play 16 games. And Eli Manning, you said it perfectly to start off the show. Eli Manning being there for every single Sunday, despite whether it be bad Eli, 30 interception Eli, or 30 touchdown Eli Manning, right? Having your franchise quarterback there and that question answered week in and week out, but then also year in and year out, that is so valuable by itself. That is so valuable by itself. Just having your starting quarterback and having that, do we have this question answered this year? Check. Yes. Okay. Let's fucking go for it. And that was basically from 2004 to, 2017, where Eli really started to go down performance-wise, or 2016, 2017, where Eli Manning really started to go down performance-wise, where every single year we were looking at ourselves, do we have 10? Let's try and fucking build a roster so we can win a Super Bowl. So for 15 years, the Giants were able to look at ourselves and say, why not us this year? Because we have 10. And if that's not enough of a case for a Hall of Fame candidacy, I don't know what is, but guess what's next? We didn't just say, why not us for 14, 15 years? We did it twice. And he was the Super Bowl MVP twice. There you go. That's my mic drop.
I don't think you're gonna say another word the rest of the show, because that was so perfectly put, and I don't even know what to say on top of that. Drew Brees, by the way, missed a full fucking year. He missed a full year. Eli never did. Never. So at the end of the day, when they want to look at Hall of Fame candidacies and they see top 7 in passing touchdowns, yards, everything like that, don't stop there. Don't. Go look at the Super Bowls he won. And I don't ever want to hear it was the defense. It was the defense. That's something I feel like we didn't talk enough about today, but we should right now. Yes, the defense was unbelievable. But you don't have those Steve Smith outs for 12 yards on third and 11 for a first down. You don't have that perfectly thrown ball to Plaxico. You don't have the perfectly thrown ball to Mario Manningham. People forget where this all started from, where both of these runs, these titles come from. That's Eli. That's that right shoulder. That's it. The defense, yes, both years, unbelievable. 07, 20 times better than 11. Don't even fucking try and tell me that's not the case, because that 07 defensive line was ferocious. 11, not bad, but that was Eli. That was Eli. That was all Eli. 8 come from behind wins, Penkin. 8 that year. And my favorite one was Arizona, by the way. I was going to do a snacks basket.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
That was my favorite one.
You know how I think that actually, because you know me,
I have a hard time. We should watch that game.
I have a hard time remembering away games for whatever, I can tell you every fucking home game, but away games, it's like, forget Justin. That might be my favorite away game of all time.
It was unbelievable.
Unbelievable game.
Like I'll never forget. Like I was in the car. Never in my life, I don't think I've ever listened to the Giants on the radio.
Yeah.
Shout out Bob Papa. I love you. But I don't really know.
Football's tough. Baseball, it's a lot more of a natural sport. It's a good pace, but yeah.
I'll listen to baseball on the radio all day, every day. But the Giants, I was in college. That year. It was my freshman year of college. And I was dormant at Montclair State University. And I remember listening it on the radio. And it was just like, it just seemed gloom, bleak, whatever you want to call it. I walk into the dorm. All of a sudden, Eli's throwing a touchdown to Hakeem Nicks, and we're going up.
Yeah.
That game is so underrated, because without that game, there's no Super Bowl 46.
No.
Not at all.
Not any of those fourth quarter comebacks. I mean, because that season was just so close.
Yeah.
All right. Snacks.
Sorry.
We're gonna have plenty of years to talk about Eli. It's the glory of this podcast. I mean, if anything, I think we've done a pretty good job this offseason of kind of not talking about him. You know, there have been some big topics that I think we've avoided. Because we want to save it. We want to let time continue to foster and whatever you what's a word?
Foster was pretty good.
Let time foster, slow cook. How about that? Slow cook the
That's
history and the allure. Well, I'm thinking of like a crock pot. The allure of Eli Manning, and we'll certainly attack that as time goes on, and especially when he's going to be Hall of Fame eligible. Oh boy, it's going to be bleeding blue. We're going to lead that fucking charge, and we're going to put out everything that especially on the YouTubes and the podcast app, that's like, hey, this guy kind of deserves it. So Snacks. So part 2 of this show is going to be talking with Big Blue VCR. We're getting into No Medals for Trying, Jerry Izenberg, 1989. It's like literally it is going to take you through an entire week of the 1989 season. Jerry Izenberg was like following Bill Parcells. He's following Belichick all around. So we're going to give some context to that season, what was going on. BBVCR obviously does a great job. So without further ado, let's take it away. And then we'll see you next week.
Fuck Tiki Barber.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going to be getting into a book called No Medals for Trying by Jerry Izenberg. I've been talking about this book for 2 years. I've read already part of it. But inevitably, I always, need to go back and refresh myself because we're going to be talking about it on the show. And that's where we're going to be spending the majority of July. We're going to be reading that book and going through it. Mm-hmm. So I figured there's not a better person. It's not a better person than Big Blue VCR, who has probably all these games on, cassette and on a hard drive anyway. Maybe briefly, let's introduce the 1989 season. Now, I know you're aware of No Medals for Trying, but mm-hmm. Jerry Izenberg starts writing when they get on the plane from losing in Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And it feels like everybody's hurt. Everybody's at a part of a season where they're all banged up and they need to prep for Randall Cunningham and the Philadelphia Eagles the next week. So that's what the book is about, writing about that entire process. 1989 I believe was a pretty fun season for the Giants. Went 12-4. So why don't you kind of introduce that season for us and maybe give some context around what we're going to be reading about, what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. Like I said, it's Jerry Izenberg is an amazing author, and it is a great book. I read it when it came out 30 years ago. And I have it somewhere amongst my Giants, documents all over the place. When you talk about 89, you really got to go back to 88 and what happened in 88. And we could be here for like 5 hours talking about 88, but the real kind of like top line to remember about 88 is they went 10-6. They missed the playoffs, and they missed the playoffs because they lost that last game against the Jets when Al Toon caught a pass against Tom Flynn. And later that day, the Eagles beat, I think they beat Dallas. They beat Dallas, they beat the Cardinals, where they clinched the NFC East. And then that night, the 49ers lost to the Rams on Sunday Night Football, where they just literally just didn't stop trying. And that's where Phil Simms famously said they laid down like dogs because they didn't want the Giants in the playoffs. But the key thing from what happened from 88 to 89 was the Giants actually reinvented themselves later in that season. We know about the up and downs in 88, they had those horrible losses to the 49ers when Rice caught the pass, and then the blocked field goal in the rain in overtime against the Eagles. I was in the stands for that one. That was horrible. But what's lost was after that game when LT blocked the field goal and Clyde Simmons ran it in. The next week, the Giants went to the Saints, and that's the famous game with LT with his shoulder when he had the 3 sacks and Hostetler started and he hit Baker for an 85-yard touchdown. And the Giants won on a last-second field goal from Paul McFadden, who, to my knowledge, is the only barefoot kicker the Giants had. You should actually do a thing on barefoot kickers one day. That was a weird thing back in the 70s and 80s. The Giants got hot at that point. They actually, that next week after they beat the Saints, they blew out the Phoenix Cardinals, where the Phoenix Cardinals beat them before. The Giants beat them like 44-7 or something like that. They then blew out the Chiefs. Not that the Chiefs were anything great, but they were rolling going into that Jet game. And if you could make a comparison in 88, you can compare it almost to 2011 in that they were up and down, and then they got hot at the end. The only difference is the Giants did not put the Jets away. And the Giants in that game went down 20-7. Sims was sacked like 8 times. Like there was a guy who was a replacement player, Ken Rose, sacked him 3 times. Marty Lyons, who's an announcer for the Jets, was a run stuffer. He got him twice. So that game was the worst game on earth to me. Like nothing will top how bad that one was, because 88 was the one season where you didn't have a dominant team. If the Giants had made it into the playoffs, beating the Jets, they had as good a shot as anyone of winning that Super Bowl, because the 49ers wanted nothing to do with them. But when coming out of the 88 season, what Parcells realized was Harry Carson was gone. George Martin were gone. They both retired. When you look at the offensive line at the start of the 88 season, he had William Roberts at left tackle. He had Carl Nelson at right tackle. He had Billy Yard as one of the guards. He had Damian Johnson as the other guard, and Bart Oates as the center. By the time the season ended against the Jets, the only player in the same spot was Oates.
And the ironic thing is that Oates gone the next season and in San Francisco the next season?
No, Oates left after 93 to the 49ers. So
then
Oates.
Who left? There was didn't Bart Oates and Billy Ard, they were very close, and then one of them left and went to the 49ers. No.
Ard actually left as a plan B free agent to the Packers, and Oates stayed. So what happened was William Roberts was considered almost a bust. Like he was Eric Flowers. They're like, put him at right tackle. Like that doesn't work. Put him at left tackle. That doesn't work. They put him at left guard. They then took Jumbo, who was first playing right tackle, and Parcells made him a left tackle. So suddenly you had Jumbo and you had William Roberts on the left side. Oates stayed in the center. They then took out Damian Johnson, and Eric Moore became their guard, and then Doug Riesenberg became their right tackle. So by the end of the season, that line started to gel to become the unit that ultimately went on to win the Super Bowl 2 years later. But it started throughout the whole 88 season. Then you get to 89. And when you talk about 89, you have to remember, and it would kill me at the time, because you had the NFC East was the Eagles, the Redskins, and the Giants. They were the 3 favorites. Like they were the ones that everyone said that they're going to win. I mean, the Redskins had the Super Bowl hangover in 88. Everyone knew they were going to be better in 89. The Giants were 10-6 coming back. The Eagles are the media darlings. Everyone loved them, because you had Randall doing his thing, like all the things, but Buddy Ryan was promising Super Bowls all over the place. Their defense, like everyone loved the Eagles. Everyone knew the Cowboys were awful, the Jimmy Johnson Cowboys, because they had, Jimmy Johnson blew the whole team up at that point, and all he had was really a Herschel. Then he eventually traded him, which jump started the Cowboys. That's a different story. And then the Cardinals, who no one took seriously. So going into 89, you really had those 3 teams. The Giants, however, had now established their offensive line. The Giants also had an amazing draft. Like if you want to look back at the 89 draft, look at what the Giants did, where their first 2 picks, they took Brian Williams, who was a center guard, and they took Bob Cratch, who was a guard. Both guys out of the Big Ten. The Giants were big Big Ten people back then, like Michigan State. George Young loved those guys. And George Young believed in something, I'm not sure if you guys heard this, called the planet theory. And what the planet theory was there's only a certain number of large people on the planet who are big enough and fast enough to play offensive or defensive lines in the NFL. And when you find one of those, you draft them.
Huh.
Because that was his theory. And he called
his type of guy, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what he called the planet theory. So he already, when the year before had Eric Moore and Jumbo Elliott, he followed that up with Williams and Cratch right on top of that. So he built up the lines. The Giants also got Greg Jackson in that draft. They got Myron Guyton in that draft. They got Howard Cross in that draft. Lewis Tillman in that draft, and Dave Meggett.
Dave Meggett.
And they got Meggett in that draft. And one of the things you have to remember is every Giant fan loved Phil McConkey. Like, we all did. He waved his towel. He did the stuff. But by the end of Phil McConkey's tour with the Giants, he actually his thing was he was shorthanded. Like he would catch everything. He'd go like, 8 or 9 yards and get drilled, and then he'd pop up.
It's almost like a Hakeem Nicks. Like that's the only person I could think of in recent memory.
Yeah. Like
Hakeem caught everything.
Yep. He caught everything and did a great job. He muffed the punt against the Jets in that last game, which helped set up a Jets score. And Parcells knew it was time to move on for him. So he brought in Meggett. And I remember Meggett, it was Towson State. Like, who is this guy? He's small. Parcells likes big running backs. His first preseason game, he dropped 3 punts.
Oh no.
And you've like, okay, we're going to cut this guy.
Yep.
But Parcells stuck with him and he kept him around. And then all of a sudden what Meggett did was he brought excitement to the Giants offense, where he filled the role that Tony Galbraith played, which is a third down back. But Meggett was faster, quicker, and would do things that we hadn't seen as Giant fans coming out of the backfield. He was a matchup nightmare. The other thing that happened going into that season when you brought Meggett in was OJ Anderson. Because OJ, again, the whole story, if you like, was he was traded for in '86 because George Adams hurt his hip in the preseason. George Adams was an explosive running back in '85. I mean, if you go back, I've shown the clip of him catching a 70-yard touchdown against the Cowboys, where he actually had a short pass and he just took off and ran by. After he hurt his hip, he was never the same again. But he was gone. Joe Morris actually had like a blood disorder. He broke his nose and had an issue. And the Giants used Lee Rousson, and they realized, like, well, we could have a problem. If Joe Morris has another issue, we need help. So they traded for OJ Anderson for insurance and never really needed him. He didn't do anything in '87. By '88, he was a short yardage guy and like a touchdown vulture. Like he scored 8 touchdowns. So yeah,
that's always such a unbelievable dynamic to me, because like Joe Morris was very good, and the injury history that you bring up now, it's like, okay, I can understand why they traded for OJ, but nowadays it's completely different. Your starting running back goes down, you sign somebody on the undrafted free agent list. It's crazy.
Right, you get someone off the street, but again, that was the '80s.
I know that. That's why it's so cool to me, and it's so, it's so different. And OJ, I mean, Super Bowl MVP, like it's OJ Anderson.
Yeah, and he was, OJ Anderson, if you go back to '79 when Phil Simms was drafted, the other guy the Giants were going to take was OJ Anderson.
Yeah. I remember reading that. They always loved him. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were always going to do that. And OJ was a stud with the Cardinals. He had 1,000 yards a bunch of times. He caught like 70 passes one year. Like, so if you actually go back to that trade, the Giants actually tried to get Roy Jetstream Green, their wide receiver at the time, because they had so many wide receivers hurt in '86 that they had Hostetler playing wide receiver. And so they tried to get him the deal. It didn't, I think the Cardinals asked for a first rounder and the Giants said, forget that. And they just agreed on Anderson. But anyway, Anderson was sort of he was there, but he never got his opportunity. Morris breaks his foot in the preseason. He's out the year, and it's right before the start of the season. So they bring in OJ, and OJ has this rebirth, like out of nowhere, where then he rushes for 1,000 yards. He got like, a career high, like 14 or 15 touchdowns. But when you're, getting back to the question about like, so I'm setting all this up for '89. So '89, as a Giant fan, you're like, okay, a lot of the guys I know are gone. Harry Carson's not here anymore. George Martin's not here anymore. We do have, LT and Pepper and Banks and Leonard Marshall and, Jim Burt was actually gone too, because Jim Burt failed his physical, his back, and the Giants let him go. And then he ended up in San Francisco after that.
That's what I was thinking of.
Jim Burt.
Yep, Burt.
Okay.
Yeah. So Burt's back was bad, and the Giants said, look, we don't think you should play anymore. And Burt wanted to play, and he went over to the 49ers and won a ring with them. But for Giant fans, this is all new, and you have a new offensive line. And I showed the highlight the other day because it was Raul Allegre's birthday. And Allegre kicks the 52-yard field goal at the gun to beat the Redskins in RFK on the Monday Night Football opener. Like, as Giant fans, we didn't really know what to expect from the Giants. We're like, we think they're going to be good. Everyone's talking up the Eagles. You blink, and then all of a sudden the Giants are 8-1.
Right.
Their only loss was to the Eagles, of course, in Philly. That's the game that Banks caught the fake field goal.
Yep.
And Reggie Wade almost caught him actually when he ran towards him. That would have been bad.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that clip on Twitter before.
Yeah. They should. And but leading into the no medals for trying, that 49er game, the Giants started to get beat up and injured. Bavaro blew his ACL, and I don't even have the heart to show that in pain week because it still hurts me too much to see that, where he got high-load by Vincey Glenn, who became a Giant eventually, and Cedric Figueroa. I still remember the two of them hit him, and you saw his knee go. And I remember I actually showed the play after it. The Giants scored a touchdown after that, and Bill Parcells did not even bother watching what was going on the field. He was over at the trainer's table with Bavaro, where you see, Dr. Warren and Ronnie Barnes and all those guys, manipulating his knee. And we know what that looks like. Like, oh boy, this is bad. And of course it was, he tore his ACL. So he goes out. In the 49er game, coming off of that, LT breaks his ankle. Mm-hmm. And I actually showed that highlight as part of, pain week with all that. And it's amazing to think of today. No camera actually caught what happened that night. It's Monday Night Football. It's Lawrence Taylor. All you see is a play where like Roger Craig is scrambling out to the side. And then you look over and there's Lawrence Taylor on the ground. And then out comes the 49ers like helmet car to haul LT off, which was something that nobody wants to see. And apparently, the 49ers were known as a cut blocking team, one that would sort of go for your legs, your knees. Mm-hmm. And people complained about the way that Bill Walsh had his offensive line work. Wesley Walls apparently just cut LT, who was nowhere near the play, and took him out of his ankle and broke his ankle. Jeez. So you have LT out. You have Phil Simms, who was hurt a few weeks earlier against the Vikings on a Monday night game.
Not ideal.
And that was the Halloween. That was the day before Halloween. So Simms is hobbled. LT is, you're not sure what's going to go on with him. You have Bavaro out. So, and they got blown out by the Rams in LA. So things are sort of like looking dicey. And you have the Eagles coming in where everyone felt like that game was for the division. Like everything was on the line for that one game because the Eagles had already beaten the Giants. And they said, if they beat us again, we're tied. It's 1988 all over again. Yep. We're going to lose the tiebreaker. And, they were looking good for a wild card, which is a little bit more, different than it was in 88, where it was, they were right on the cusp because all the tiebreakers went against them in 88.
Right.
But it was the same problem that we could lose these guys and screw up the whole season.
Yeah. And I know you said it was about 30 years prior that you actually read the book. I guess this will be the final thing we'll wrap up on. You read the book 30 years prior, so I'm not going to expect you to remember every little detail. But, Snacks, obviously Snacks hasn't read it, and I just started to read it. Yep. Did you enjoy? I've only read wonderful things, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to get into it, partially because it will place me in the allure of Bill Parcells. It will place me in the allure that is, how we look at Bill Belichick even too as the defense coordinator here, and how they all go about preparing for a game, getting to hear their words, their thoughts, their observations, how they go about their business. So what are some of your overall thoughts on the book? Are we going to enjoy it? Are we making a good choice? Give us some overall thoughts to kind of get us out of here.
Oh, I think they will. If you're into Giants history, you're going to want to read it, because also you can now look back and verify the stuff that's been reported. And I love the inside look at anything with the Giants. It's the stuff that I don't see on Sundays that I love to learn about the Giants, about what it took to get a game plan together, what's going on with the medical staff, how much stuff is going on, midweek to get ready, what the game plans are looking like, where you're going to be like, okay, well, Simms may not be able to play, so we have to get ready for Hostetler, and what does that mean for our offense, and how can we basically try to use the media to confuse the Eagles about what's really going on, and how can we manipulate things. And
that's a Belichick specialty.
It's especially, and that's stuff that he learned with the Giants and under Parcells and with Ray Perkins also. So he learned a lot of those things, honed that with the Giants. The book gives you that insight. One of my favorite, documentaries that came out a while back was The Two Bills If you've seen that, the ESPN 30 for 30.
30 for 30. Unbelievable. Yeah.
I love that where he tells the story. They're talking about the Lions game in 1990 that I went to, where Belichick is worried about Mouse Davis's run and shoot, and they gave the Giants fits in 89 with it. So Belichick remembered that, and he goes, "We need speed on the defense, so I'm going to have all these defensive backs." And Parcells, being like a wise ass, goes, "Oh, well, then why you need speed? Then take Stephen Baker. He's fast, then use him, with you guys." That type of inside discussion, stuff that you don't see, that's something that you can get, that you get from this book, where you see placing, where the Giants were in 89, going into those games. And ultimately, that game against the Eagles had so many things go wrong. Like right off the bat, I mean, there was the emotional, like almost like Willis Reed lift that LT came out, and LT's ready to play, and the fans are going nuts that, like he broke his ankle and here he comes. You go in the first quarter, the Eagles scored 2 defensive touchdowns right off the bat.
Unbelievable.
And as a Giant fan, you're like, oh my God, here we go again with these guys. So you're wondering, where are we going to go again? The Giants fight back, tie the game, and it looks like they're going to get over the hump. And then Randall gets that 91-yard punt with the win because Meggett misplays it. And then Sims gets sacked by Mike Golick, fumbles, Eagles score, game's over, Giants lose. And then you're like, what is this?
Oh man. All right. So we're pumped to get into the book. We're also very thankful for you. Very thankful for your time. I mean, at this point, when you're listening, you've been on for 2 weeks. I've separated your time into 2 weeks. So I cannot thank you enough for coming on to BBVCR. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. We'll have to have you on again. This is mainly an off-season show. We don't really go during the regular season, but since the off-season's kind of wrapping up, we'd love to maybe reconnect next off-season. We could talk about some specific moments. I know I wanted to ask you about like the snowball game in 1995. So we'll get around to talking about all those moments. Like I said, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Great, thank you. Like I'm always happy to talk to Giant fans. I'm always happy to talk Giants history. Like I said, this is the my one passion that never changes, and it's been fun.
Absolutely. All right, take care.